All
Yeah.
right, it is great to see everybody. I am very excited to be here with you. We have a lot to talk about today, so let's get rolling. Folks, welcome to the Daily Power Parsha. I'd like to welcome our live Zoom viewers or participants. We have Stan, we have Ray, and Ray, we have a new name for you, iPad Ray. Is that a new device? You have a new device?
I've been called worse. That's okay.
That's hilarious. Is that a new device that you have?
It's a different one.
Nice. Tis Chadesh. To only good things. Sandrine, welcome. Stephanie, welcome. I saw it looked like you were trying to get on for a little bit. I'm glad we got you on. And Susie, welcome. All right, I'm telling you this. We have so much to explore, so much to talk about. I don't even know where to begin. But let's begin by looking at the Torah readings for today. Or Torah reading for today, and we'll sneak in some stuff about tomorrow as well. I have now, hopefully my screen is being shared with you. You guys see that? Numbers chapter 10, verse 35. Good. I always like checking in just to make sure that what I'm seeing is what you are seeing. Good. We talked about the ark yesterday, traveling before the people. Let's now jump into Numbers chapter 11. If you notice, by the way, something very important, and I need to point this out, is so the Torah reading for today begins with verses 35 and 36 of chapter 10, and then a few verses in, and then switches to chapter 11. And that's because the chapter and verses were created, they're not from Jewish historical origin, they actually come from Christian origin. And thematically, they decided what they think should be chapter and verse, and that's how that worked out. But we have our tradition, the Jewish tradition of the readings, and you see here that there's a discrepancy between what we begin as a new reading and what they decided was an end of a chapter. You guys see what I'm talking about? How it ends with the last two verses? Now, the reason why the reading does begin from, the last two verses of chapter 10, i.e., kind of the end of a previous topic, at least as understood by those that made up these chapter and verses, is because in Jewish tradition, we don't begin a reading on a negative note. We don't want to begin a reading or end a reading on a negative note. You always want to have some positive in the beginning and positive at the end. Even if the middle is a little bit negative, you always want some positive in the beginning and positive at the end. Look at the beginning of Numbers chapter 11. The people were looking to complain, and it was evil in the years of the Lord. That's a pretty lousy way to begin a reading. Are you with me on that? That's a pretty negative way to begin Shishi, the sixth reading, the reading associated with Friday. So what do? We back it up a few, and we talk about the ark. We talk about God's protection and how the ark would set out and how the ark would come to a rest. Whatever, we talk about positive things. And then we segue into this incident. So let's jump into this incident. What happened? Mendel, can you give me a LaCroix? Thank you. Okay, so what happens in Numbers chapter 11? I'm going to read it, and then I'm going to comment on it. The people were looking to complain. That's a key word there. That's a trigger word there. Looking to complain. It's not like they just complained out of nowhere. They were looking for a complaint. Do you ever have a situation where you're in a mood, you're like maybe a little bit annoyed or something, and like you're looking for a problem, you're looking for none of us, right? God forbid any of us would ever be in that situation. But you ever have that notion where you or somebody else, let's just make it safe, somebody else is just looking for a fight, for a provocation? All right, this is what was going on. The Jews were looking to complain. And it was evil in the ears of the Lord. The Lord heard, and his anger flared, and a fire from the Lord burned among them, consuming the extremes of the camp. What was this complaint? It doesn't say what they complained about. It just said that they were complaining or looking to complain. The understanding by the commentaries is they were complaining about the journey. Remember what we just read about yesterday, the first journey? They were camped at Mount Sinai, and this was the first journey that they took from Mount Sinai. Okay, already they're complaining. Journey 1, complaint 1. I hope you realize and appreciate what's going on here. They have one journey under their belts, not even. The first journey, oh, come on, it's too hot outside, it's too this, it's too that, it's too bumpy, the sand getting in my eyes, it's a desert. Who's leading this trip anyway? I want to go to Disney. Everyone's kvetching. They're all complaining. So what happens? A fire breaks out and consumes the extremes of the camp, kind of like the edges of the camp. The people cried to Moses, verse 2, Moses prayed to the Lord, and the fire died down. By the way, much of the book of Numbers is this. People messing up, a plague breaking out, people cry to Moses, Moses prays to God, and then God puts an end to the plague. That's pretty much, half of this book talks some stories like this. So, what was the name of that place? He named that place Tab'era, for the fire of the Lord. Tab'era also means like fire, for the fire of the Lord had burned among them there. But if you think they're done, oh boy, Jews can kvetch. We know this from the inside out. Jews can kvetch, and if you think they're done kvetching, nope, fire's done, let's kvetch again. But the multitude among them began to have strong cravings. What were the cravings for? Then even the children of Israel once again began to cry, and they said, who will feed us meat? They wanted meat. You understand what's going on here? Let me explain. The people were subsisting on manna from heaven, like miracle food. Amazing miracle food they didn't have to work for. They didn't have to plant. They didn't have to harvest. They didn't have to, nothing. It came to your doorstep. And they're kvetching. We want meat. Look at verse 5. This will really shock you. This is a continuation of what they were saying. We remember the fish that we ate in Egypt free of charge, the cucumbers, the watermelons, the leeks, the onions, and the garlic. But now our bodies are dried out, for there's nothing at all. We have nothing but manna to look at. Are you kidding me? I hope you can see here, this is an example. You can have the greatest blessing, and you can look at it as the greatest curse. Such is the power of the human mind. You can have something that is objectively phenomenal, and you can be miserable about it. That's it. By the way, I told you the reverse of this, the opposite of this. You can have something that's objectively painful, and look at it as a blessing. If you're carrying diamonds, I've mentioned a few times over the last week or two, if you believe that in your pekel, in your bag, is a pack of diamonds, it doesn't matter how heavy it is, you're positive about life. So you can look at difficulty with joy. You can look at joy with difficulty. You can look at a curse as a blessing, and you can look at a blessing as a curse. That is the power of the lenses through which we look at the world. You choose the definition of your life. There's a Torah portion in the book of Deuteronomy. We'll get there. It's the next book over. It's called Re'eh. Re'eh, which means see. And the Torah portion opens up, Re'eh nasati lechem es habracha v'es haklala. See, I have placed before you the blessing and the curse. And the commentators wonder, why see? What are they supposed to see? There's a beautiful explanation about this, one of many. Re'eh, how you see will determine whether you're living a blessing or a curse. There's no objective blessing or curse. There's nothing objective about that. A good life or a difficult life? No answer. How do you look at it? A person can find meaning in difficulty. I've heard from people that have survived terrible illnesses, that what they feel, how they've grown from that experience, they would not have exchanged it for anything. If they had an opportunity to go back and choose a different way, choose a different destiny, they wouldn't actually make a different choice. This is the human ability to frame things. You can frame anything the way you want. This is where choice comes in. Re'ei nasati lachem es habracha v'es haklala. See, I'm placing before you a blessing and a curse. How you see it will determine if it is a blessing or if it is a curse. Now, in this context, the people are complaining about manna, which is like the greatest food that ever existed. And in fact, the Torah interjects kind of the narrator jumping in. I love this. This doesn't usually happen. Usually we're told what's going on. And here, like, there's a narrator that says, public service announcement, verse 7. Now the manna was like coriander seed, and its appearance was like the appearance of crystal. The people walked about and gathered it. Then they ground it in a mill or crushed it in a mortar, cooked it in a pot, and made it into cakes. It had a taste like the taste of oil cake. I don't know, oil cake, whatever that means. Fine. When the dew descended on the camp at night, the manna would descend upon it. So dew, there was a layer of dew, and then a layer of the manna, and then a layer of dew on top. Fine. People were complaining about it. And we know from our tradition that the manna could taste like whatever you wanted. It was this miracle food. You could prepare it in any different way. You can grind it, you can crush it, you can cook it, you can make it into cakes. Do whatever you want. And they were kvetching, they were complaining about it. The greatest blessing they looked at as, oh, it's terrible. And look what they're asking for. We remember the fish that we ate in Egypt free of charge. Are you kidding me? What, you forgot the slavery bit? Talk about a revisionist history. Whoa, Egypt was great. This is ridiculous. What are you doing to us, God and Moses? This is crazy. What's going on? I mean, it's mind-boggling, but this is what's going on. This was the next complaint. Moses heard the weeping with their families, verse 10. Moses heard the people weeping with their families, each one at the entrance of his tent. The Lord became very angry, and Moses considered it evil. And look what happens next. Moses says to the Lord, why have you treated your servant so badly? He's referring to himself. Why have I not found favor in your eyes that you place the burden of this entire people upon me? In other words, what did I do wrong to deserve this, all this fetching? They're angry at me now, right? They're attacking me. Like, what kind of leader is this who's not giving us any food? We want meat. And Moses turns to God and says, I don't even know how I got this job. What did I do wrong to deserve this position? Did I conceive this entire people? Look at verse 12. Are they literally my responsibility? Did I give birth to them that you say to me, carry them in your bosom as the nurse carries the suckling to the land that you promised your forefathers? Where can I get meat to give all these people? For they are crying on me saying, give us meat to eat. I mean, look, this is pretty strong, by the way. Moses usually takes things in stride. Here you see Moshe Rabbeinu, he's saying to God, listen, this is getting crazy here. What am I supposed to do with these people? Alone I cannot carry this entire people, for it is too hard for me. If this is the way you treat me, he says to God, please kill me if I have found favor in your eyes, so that I not see my misfortune. Look at that. This is Moses speaking to God. This is the same Moses that goes to bat for the Jewish people time and again, and here he's saying, they're asking for meat, I'm out. If it's a spiritual issue, a spiritual challenge, whatever, but they're asking for meat, of all things to complain about. They want steak. You're in a desert. You're being protected by clouds of glory. God is carrying you on his wings, so to speak, to the land of Israel. And you're thinking about brisket? Are you kidding me? You can't go camping for a few weeks? What's going on here? Remember, at this point in time, it wasn't yet a destiny of 40 years in the desert. They were supposed to go straight in. That was due to another complaint, which we'll get to in a few weeks. Next week we'll get to that. I'm going to summarize God's answer. God says to Moses, take 70 people and appoint them as leaders. And I'll give them some of your spiritual quality. I'll kind of separate some of your spirituality from you. Not take it away, but like fire to fire, and grant them also prophecy and spiritual leadership. And you'll have a committee to work with, so that it's not falling completely upon your shoulders. Fine, that's with regards to the issue of Moses saying, I can't bear the burden of these people alone. But what about the meat request? And to the people you shall say, verse 18, prepare yourselves for tomorrow, and you shall eat meat, because you've cried in the ears of the Lord, saying, who will feed us meat? Therefore the Lord will give you meat, and you shall eat. God says, you want meat? I'll give you meat. And you're not going to eat it for 1 day, not 2 days, not 5 days, not 10 days, and not 20 days, but for a full month. Sounds like an infomercial, right? How much would you pay for these Ron Popeil knives, right? $100 no, $80 no, $60 no, and with this you get an extra, guillotine slicer. Listen, God is saying, I'm not going to feed them 1 day, not 2 days, not 5 days, not 10 days, not 20 days, a full month, until it comes out of your nose and nauseates you. You're going to have so much meat, you're not going to want it anymore. Because you have despised the Lord who is among you, and you cried out before him, saying, why did we even leave Egypt? That's what they were saying. Why did we leave Egypt? Or why did we ever leave Egypt? It was so much better. We had meat. God saying, you want meat? I'll give you meat. Then Moses says to God, there's 600,000 people, and you're going to say meat for a month? Where am I going to get meat? If sheep and cattle were slaughtered for them, would it suffice for them? If all the fish in the sea were gathered for them, would it suffice for them? There's a lot of people to feed. Where are you going to get meat? God says to Moses, is my power limited? Now you will see if my word comes true for you or not. Fine. What happens? Bottom line is, let's keep on going. It's not here. It must be in the next reading. At that point, God had promised the meat. The meat's going to come in the next reading. That's when the quail, this just incredible amount of quail, descend from the heavens and provides kosher poultry, if you will, for the people. But one thing that happens in middle over here is there were two people, Eldad and Medad, who were, okay, here's what happened. Work with me here. What is 72 divided by 12? 5?
6.
6. Right? 6. 6 times 12 is 72. So Moshe originally picked 6 people from each tribe to be these 70 leaders. But if you pick 6 from each tribe, you get 72. So, and there were only supposed to be 70 leaders. So you had 72 because they picked equally from each tribe. So what did they do? They drew lots. And 70 pieces of paper said Navi, prophet. And 2 pieces were blank. So it was Eldad and Medad, these 2 other individuals, not others, these 2 individuals, Eldad and Medad, who drew the blanks. They got the non-prophet status. So of the 70 appointed, prophets, elders, whatever you want to call them, from the 72 that were originally selected, only 70 got the job. These 2 didn't. But what happened was, in the process of God taking from Moses' spirit and bestowing it on others, Eldad and Medad also ended up with prophecy. Maybe they weren't officially counted amongst the 70. They were the 2 that were not counted. Nonetheless, they were instilled with the spirit of prophecy. And they were going, as Rashi explains, around the camp saying a prophecy. And what was the prophecy? Moses will die, and Joshua is going to lead the people into Egypt, which was a shock. At this point in time, it was a shock to say that, because everyone thought that Moses was going to lead them straight into Israel. They were now prophesying in verse 26, saying, no, we got new information. What's going to happen is that Moses will not be the one who leads us into Israel. He's going to die at some point, and it's going to be Joshua who leads us in. So the lad, who's Joshua himself, who would be the leader, the lad Joshua ran and told Moses, saying, Eldad and Medad are prophesying in the camp. Oh, I'm sorry, this must be somebody else, some other lad, maybe one of Moses' sons. And then Joshua says, because remember, it was about Joshua. It said Moses was going to die and Joshua was going to lead. So Joshua jumps in and says, Moses, my master, imprison them. Stop them from prophesying. Stop this communication. Moses said to him, are you zealous for my sake? If only all the Lord's people were prophets, and that the Lord would bestow his spirit upon them. No, let them keep on going. I like more leaders. I like more prophets. Okay, there you have a little bit of tension. It's a little bit uncomfortable for Joshua, clearly, because the communication specifically refers to him, saying that Moses will die, pass away, and then he's going to lead the people into Israel, and that to him, he wasn't yet a leader, and that to him was a little uncomfortable and embarrassing maybe, or, he was very humble and this was going on. So he says, stop them, and Moses says, no, I'm not going to stop them. Okay, let's keep on jumping into the 7th reading. I see there's some chats lighting up. Let's see what's going on here. Sunday's topic, from happiness to sadness. Yes. No, sorry, from sadness to happiness. Rashi says Moses was shown the punishments that were coming. Why he said, kill me first? Yes. Oh, so Moses sees the dangers that are coming, and he's like, take me out. Did the pillar of fire disappear? 11:2. Hold on, let me go back. Hold on, I went forward. Let me go back. I didn't see that comment before. What's this subscription notice here? The people cried out to Moses. Moses prayed to the Lord, and the fire died down. No, this is not the pillar of fire at night. This was a plague fire that was killing the people. A fire from the camp burned among them and consuming. This was a punishment fire. This was not the normative fire that was illuminating, providing nightlight for them at night. That was a good fire. That was a godly fire. This is also, but that was a positive fire. This was a punishment fire. Okay, We had, I think, one more comment in the chat box. Let's see what that was. Rashi says, make an end of them. Where, Mark, to where? What are you referring to? Where is that? Oh, not imprison them. Oh, yeah.
Rashi says that.
El that made that. Right. Stop them. Right.
End of them.
And end them. Stop what they're doing. Yeah. Okay, good. Fine. So let's do the 7th reading. Now let's see the end of the story and the dramatic conclusion to our Torah portion, because it is dramatic. So what happened is the quails came. Okay, so we have the prophets that emerged, the 2 extra ones, fine. Then quails came from the sea and basically dumped quails one day's journey this way and that way. In other words, imagine like how far can you walk in one day? Like several miles. So they had several miles of coverage of quail, about 2 cubits above the ground. Each cubit is about 1.5 feet. So imagine 3 feet piled with quail and miles in a massive diameter. So I mean, we're talking about a very large area of quail, a lot of quail, and the people gathered the quails. Even the one who gathered the least collected 10 heaps of quails. People were going nuts. It was like just grabbing the quails. The meat was still between the teeth. Verse 33. This is the dramatic end of this story. The meat was still between their teeth. It was not yet finished, and the anger of the Lord flared against the people. And the Lord struck the people with a very mighty blow. I hope now it's clear why God was not happy with this whole thing. God says, you want meat, I'll give you meat. But now that you're fressing the meat, you know what fressing means in Yiddish? It means that you're like going at the meat now. That's it. Plague. He named that place Kivrot Hataiva, graves of craving. That's a great name. For there they buried the people who craved, the people who were craving the meat. The gluttonous desirers ended up killed with the plague. And then the Torah says they traveled from there to Chatzeros, and there they remained for a little bit. Anyway, this is the end of that story with the meat. The point is that God was not happy with the meat. God said, I'm going to give you meat, but if you jump at it and that becomes your entire identity, no, it's not going to end well. The message for us is, look, I mean, first of all, if you have manna, appreciate what you have. If you have a blessing, then be grateful. Don't be ungrateful. Don't complain about your blessing. That's not a good look. That's not a cool move. God doesn't like it. No one likes it. You shouldn't like it. It's not a good look. Don't kvetch about good things. Number 1. Number 2, don't be so gluttonous. Yeah, you have meat now. Okay, great. So everyone's going nuts over the meat. Not cool. And again, there's a consequence that happens immediately. We live in different times, obviously. Back then, these types of consequences were immediate. But I just want to share with you, I'm using the word consequence deliberately. Because imagine a consequence, right? You put your hand in fire, you're going to get burned. And it's not like you get punished. Because you didn't listen to your mother who said don't touch fire, and you touch fire, therefore the fire is punishing you, getting back at you. You violated my space, I'm going to get you. That's not how fire burns. That's not how it works. Fire is hot by nature. You put your hand in fire, you're going to get burned. You're not supposed to touch these things, right? You're not supposed to be complaining about these things. You enter that space, then you're going to get burned. That's the way it is. That's the way it was then. Nowadays, God give us more rope, if you will. But back then, those people in that context, that's where they were at. That's where they were meant to be holding. One final story to close out our Torah portion, which is really important. I'm going to give you the cliff notes of it. Basically, ever since Mount Sinai, this is a very important thing that I'm about to share with you. From the Sinai experience, Moses separated from his wife. Because the understanding was that at any point in time, Moses could be called into communication by God, and Moses had to be in a state of ritual purity. And the reality is that was the notion of physical intimacy, right? Although it's a mitzvah in Torah, not only for procreation purposes, but in a healthy context, it's certainly a mitzvah, a relationship, a connection like that. Nonetheless, it does render on some level an element of impurity, which is covered by a simple mikvah immersion, but nonetheless it requires some measure of protocol. And if Moses is being called at any moment, then Moses essentially at that point separated from his wife. Now, what happens is, Numbers chapter 12, Miriam and Aaron are now speaking about Moses. And what are they saying about him behind his back? this. They're saying, wow, you heard Moses, Moshe, our brother. They were all siblings, right? Moshe, Aaron, Miriam, Aaron, and Moshe. Miriam was the oldest. Then her younger brother was Aaron, and the youngest brother was Moshe. Miriam, Aaron, and Moshe. Okay, that's the family. So the two older siblings are now talking about the younger one. Oh, you heard Moshe separated from his wife. And look what they said. Has the Lord only spoken to Moses? Hasn't he spoken to us too? Right? They were saying, like, we're also prophets. And we haven't separated from our spouses. So what's up with our younger brother? What happens is, and the Lord heard. Right? God got wind of this conversation. And as you'll see soon, God was not happy. Now, this man Moses was exceedingly humble, more so than any person on the face of the earth. The Lord suddenly said to Moses, Aaron, and Miriam, go out, all three of you, to the tent of meeting. Now they're being called into the principal's office. This is now getting serious. The Lord descended in a pillar of cloud and stood at the entrance of the tent. He called to Aaron and Miriam, and they both went out. He said, please listen to my words. If there be prophets among you, I, the Lord, will make myself known to him in a vision, and I will speak to him in a dream. In other words, God is saying, for most people, prophecy is going to happen in a not so clear way. A vision, a dream, nocturnal, right? You're not so aware. It's going to happen in a kind of out of body context. Not so is my servant Moses. He is faithful throughout my house. With him I speak mouth to mouth, in a vision and not in riddles. And he beholds the image of the Lord. So why were you not afraid to speak against my servant Moses? Basically, God is saying, how can you compare yourselves in your prophecy to Moshe's prophecy? It's on a completely different level. So he's addressing the gossip. They were, listen, let's just be very clear here. They were doing what we call lashon hara, which is speaking ill of someone else behind their back. They were speaking lashon hara. That's what's going on. That's what the Torah is telling us. And God calls them out on it. And he says, first of all, you can't do that. Second of all, you're wrong, because why did Moses separate from his wife? He's a different level prophet. He's not like you guys. He's a different level. It's a different relationship that I have with him. Anyway, the wrath of the Lord flared against them, and he left. And the result of it is that Miriam is afflicted with saras, with that leprosy-like affliction. And this is how we know that when the Torah speaks about saras, that it's because of lashon hara. Remember, like weeks ago, we spoke about the skin malady, or the clothing malady, or the home malady of saras, and we said it's because of speaking negatively about someone else. How do we know that? Well, it's because right here we have cause and effect. Miriam is the one that gets it, because Miriam is the one who was doing the speaking. Miriam was speaking about Moshe. Aaron was listening, right? And then Moshe was the one being spoken about. So all three are affected on some level, but the most harshest penalty, if you will, came against Miriam. She is afflicted with saras. And they pray for her. Aaron and Moshe pray for her healing. And so Hashem says, fine, it's going to happen for 7 days. She will be confined for 7 days outside the camp, and afterwards she may enter. So Miriam was confined outside the camp for 7 days, and the people did not travel until Miriam had entered. That's it. So that's the end of the story. So basically, Miriam speaks ill of her brother. Aaron is listening. Moshe is the one who's being spoken about. All three are affected. God calls all three out, which is why the Talmud says that when we speak ill about someone else, three people are affected: the speaker, the listener, and the one who it's about. So all three on some level are affected. The most severe penalty is for Miriam, because she was doing the talking, and she gets saras, and 7 days she's quarantined. It seems like it disappeared right away, and then for 7 days was the period of cleansing, and then she was once again allowed to return to the camp. But what's the message? The message is, let's not speak about other people. Right? Let's not gossip about them. Let's not, oh, you heard what happened? You heard what's going on with this person, that person? You heard what's going on with their family? You heard what's going on with their relationship? It's not our business, even if it's family. That's the message here. Even it's mishpacha, it's family. If you want to have a conversation with them, have a conversation with them. If you're wondering why your brother is doing something, speak to your brother. Don't speak to another brother about your brother. You with me on that? It's very hard, because you think you're mishpacha, your family. Maybe the rules don't apply. Maybe lashon hara doesn't apply with family. Maybe you can gossip about family. What's the big deal? Oh, you heard what brother so-and-so or what sister so-and-so? It sounds like nuns. But whatever. You know what Chaimel did, or what Avremel's doing, or what Saralez is thinking. It's not our place. We're not meant to gossip. You want to speak to someone? Speak to them. Speak about them? Don't speak about them. Once again, that's the message. And the message here is also that the people waited for her. They waited for her until she came back to the camp. Not that they were really going to abandon her, alone outside the camp, but the point is that there was a deliberate waiting. They didn't even begin any travel preparations until she came back. And our sages say it was a reward, mida kenega mida, for the way she waited for her brother when her brother was put on the Nile. Remember when Moshe was put in the little basket floating on the river, and Miriam was waiting there until he was safely rescued by Pharaoh's daughter? She waited for him, the entire people wait for her. So, there was, she said something that according to the Torah, according to God, she shouldn't have. Okay, I'm not judging her, I'm just saying Torah says clearly that it wasn't something so good, but the people waited for her. People waited for her like she waited for others. And the message is, look, be there for someone else, and others will be there for you. When we have chesed, when we're there, dedicated to someone else, then that always comes back to us in a positive way for blessing. So I think we end on a positive message. By the way, there's 6 remembrances that we're supposed to say every day. 6 things that the Torah says to remember about. One of them is this story of Miriam. Remember what happened with Miriam with this story. And what it means is thinking about not only her speaking ill of her brother, but also the fact that because she benefited Moshe years ago, we're talking about decades ago, at least 80 years prior, because Moses was 80 at the time of the Exodus, so 81 years ago she waited for her brother. 81 years later the people wait for her. So that's a thing to remember. Remember the power of a single mitzvah, a single good deed. One good deed can change history, but also can change destiny for us many, many years down the line. Even if it's not right away, every positive deed has a positive effect. Okay, so this takes us to the end of today's reading, or of the actual Torah portion. I hope you enjoyed it. It's I didn't give a lot of commentary because I think the stories themselves are so dramatic. We talked about the complaint about the manna. I did mention different perspectives. You can look at something challenging as a blessing, or a blessing as a challenge. That's us. That's free choice. We have the ability to choose how we see things. We spoke about the we spoke about the quail and the punishment. We spoke about the prophets, the 70 prophets, and the extra 2, which, by the way, I wanted to specifically mention Eldad and Medad and the extra 2 prophets and what they were saying about Moses passing away and Joshua leading the people. That's going to tie into next week's Torah portion, which we'll get to next week. And then we spoke, of course, about Miriam and Aaron and Moshe, and of course, how the Torah talks about the prophecy of Moshe as being completely different level than everyone else. Stan, you probably remember that from our most recent Ali course, when we talked about the session on prophecy, how we talked about how Moses' prophecy differs from all of the other prophets that ever existed. Everyone else had sort of a vision or a dream, something non-literal, whereas Moshe saw things with clear and open eyes, had that face-to-face, so to speak, communication with God that was unprecedented and never to be repeated in history. Moses was unique. And by the way, at some point it seems like Moses still felt overwhelmed. So listen, if we're feeling overwhelmed, take a deep breath, find someone to help. Moses got help. We also can get help, right? Some people to help carry the burden. We shouldn't feel the pressure alone on our shoulders. So a lot of messages to take into Shabbos, but I wish you a wonderful Shabbos, a peaceful Shabbos. Oh, Mark says, my Rashi says, this teaches us how to ask for something. Yeah, short, please God. Yeah. Short prayer, short request. And God helps those who help themselves. If we know that we need help in a certain area, I mean a very simple thing. Let's say we need help with shopping. Okay, ask a friend. Are you going to the store? Can you get me something? Simple things. But we should never push ourselves to the point to where we feel overwhelmed. Let's reach out and ask. Moshe asked to God, and God delivered. God says, you need help? I'm giving you 70 more prophets. All right, you got this. I got your back. Let's not be afraid to ask. Yeah, it's better to ask and to get, or maybe not get, than to not ask and feel, resent. That's not good. That's not healthy. So let's not feel resent. Let's feel joy in our lives. Let's go into Shabbos with a sense of peace and serenity. And I want to wish you Shabbat Shalom. Hope to see you on Sunday. On Sunday we're having Kabbalah and Coffee, 9:30 a.m., as well as Sunday night fireside chat. The topic of the fireside chat, I love this topic, is, I'm going to share my screen with you in a moment. The topic for the fireside chat this Sunday is everything I know about happiness I learned from sadness. This is a talk from Mrs. Shandy Jacobson, who is a renowned educator and accomplished musician. She is the director of the International Rosh Chodesh Society for Women's Studies. She's a scholar. She's an incredible educator, and she's been through many challenges in her own life. And I will say that her topic ties into what I said before about using or moving from sadness to a space of happiness. How to flip challenge to opportunity. So join us Sunday night, 7 p.m. Tell your friends, tell your family. Don't gossip about them, but just tell them about this thing going on. All right, great to see you all. Shabbat shalom. Be well. Stay safe.
Thank you. Shabbat shalom.
See you. Take care. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.